And one of the people who I believe is exhibiting in her work what it actually means to be that kind of great American is with us today. She has been, as she would say, a lifelong UU with a few sidesteps. And since the fall of 2015, she started a community-based group to help refugees that came here to this country. And it became the Lexington Refugee Assistance Program, or LexRap. And I worked with her in a program about a year ago called Yearning to Breathe Free, which was bringing knowledge and light to the plight of refugees. Will you please welcome Marianne Boswell?
Coming after Reggie is not fair. The journey to justice sometimes takes more than one lifetime. Both my mother and father were German Jews. My mother's family came in waves in the 1800s. My father arrived in 1936. Both shed most of their Jewishness for different reasons. Their Germanness, though, was apparent, with Christmas trees, very good seeded rye bread, and punctuality. Growing up, I knew hundreds of stories about my mother's family and her childhood, stories rich with history and humor. Her grandfather ran away in his teens and joined the circus and became a water boy for Jumbo the elephant. He plucked hairs out of Jumbo's tail and sold them. Eventually, he became a partner with Buffalo Bill. My sister and I pestered my father for stories about Germany and got nothing. Finally, when I was 12, he told us a story. He said, "My father's business partner fled the country with company money. My father thought he would be in serious trouble. There was a knock on the door. He thought it was the SS, and he shot himself." About 10 years later in the US, his mother, my grandmother, was found dead with her head in her kitchen gas oven. No wonder there were no stories. My father's road as a refugee began with the first suicide. Recently, I found out he didn't arrive in the States with the rest of his family as we had always been told. Instead, he arrived a year later, alone, traveling from Palestine at 19, having been without a home for 3 years. I never knew. Refugees tend not to talk about what they left or what they went through. Unless your family is Native American or descended from slaves, your family came to America for a better life. That is the core foundation of this country. Refugees come not just for what they will find, but to escape what they left behind, violence and or persecution. This is the definition of a refugee by international treaty and by law. There is a poem called Home by Warsan Shire. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. It continues. No one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. In 2015, thousands of people walked north to Europe, fleeing violence in Syria and Africa. That September, I sent an email to the Lexington listserv saying, "I have an extra bedroom and can take in a Syrian family. Who's with me?" Within 48 hours, 10 people had said, "Count me in." And 20 people said, "How can I help?" We met every 2 weeks for 7 months trying to understand the current refugee landscape and U.S. rules. What can we do? We learned that currently there are over 68 million people who were forced to flee their homes. In the history of the world, this level of crisis has only been seen once, after World War II, when the country lines of Europe were dramatically redrawn and people fled for their lives. Today, there are over 25 million people who are refugees, who first must apply to the UN to be resettled in a new country. Less than 1% will be. We became LEXRAP, Lexington Refugee Assistance Program, a community-based do-what-we-can group that now helps 46 people in and around Lexington. Our goal is to help refugees feel welcome and become productive members of their communities. We raise awareness and educate, explaining what a refugee is and how people can help. We are a catch-all, helping, extended hand. Refugees resettled in the U.S. get 3 months of financial and social services and get slapped with the debt of their airfare, which they must repay. Crazy little help for people who arrive with nothing and no clue how to navigate their new life in the U.S. My father arrived with education, money, and speaking English. With a German accent and a Jewish-sounding name and a war going on, it was still very hard. But he had a family. Some of our LexRap folks arrive alone with no one. Some arrive with children who have no education because in the camp, leaving the tent is unsafe. Some are trained professionals who must be retrained, or doctors with years of education and experience who have a slim chance of getting licensed in America. Yet they come, yearning to be free and safe. They come like our families did, with hope of building a better life. All my life, when asked if my father was a survivor, I would say no. He got out early. Survivor is a term that I have always held with singular reverence and respect for those who had been in concentration camps. Now, I look at my father's experience through the eyes of my refugee friends. I think of what it must have been like to be transient in countries where a different language is spoken, to spend years not knowing how the journey would end. My father survived a lot, not just the suicides of both of his parents. Some of you know Osama in Lexington. His wife was cleared to take the citizenship test a year before he was because he's a Muslim man. That year was filled with fear as the administration's rhetoric and actions targeted immigrants and refugees. And most people don't know the difference between the two. A highlight of my fall was attending Osama's citizenship swearing-in ceremony. LexRap has 4 new U.S. citizens. Just yesterday, I went to another citizenship ceremony, my own. I applied for restoration of German citizenship. There is a special German law just for descendants of people who fled the Nazis or had their citizenship stripped. I thought long and hard about doing this. I don't think enough had changed in Germany before my father died for him to have ever considered doing this. But it was Germany that led the way and opened its doors to those who marched north from Syria and Africa. And yes, there is anti-Semitism and anti-immigrant sentiments rising in Europe as it has also risen here. My becoming a dual citizen doesn't dilute or change how proud I am, and always will be, to be an American. But my family was German. My father was not allowed to be. A lot was taken away. Restoration of my German citizenship. It is the word restoration that speaks to me. My journey to justice. Thank you.